Ride to Happiness is the new standout roller coaster at Plopsaland de Panne. It's only the second Mack Extreme Spinner to be built, but it's already widely considered to be possibly Europe's best coaster. I got the chance to ride it 25 times over the 2 days on January 29th and 30th in all possible rows and seats. So I got a pretty good feel for it. So how good is it really, and does it deserve the unofficial best coaster in Europe title? This is my review of the Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland, the new Mack Extreme Spinner at Plopsaland de Panne. Before I start with the review, I have to clarify that I'm writing this review based off my rides which were done in January. So my experience might not have been as good as for someone who experienced the ride on a hot summer day in the evening when it's dark and hauling. So just keep that in mind, and now let's start with the review. The presentation of this coaster is amazing. The station and maintenance building look awesome. The area where the station and queue are placed in are landscaped very nicely. The first half of the ride that was built over the lake also looks aesthetically very pleasing. The twisted structure of track and supports and the sheer scale of the ride also look very impressive and even a little intimidating sometimes. The queue includes 2 queue houses which have some nice theming. I wasn't really able to look at the theming since I always just walked through the queue because the ride was literally a walk-on. But from what I saw, I have to say it looks really good. The queue starts off with the first queue house, which has a few switchbacks. Afterwards you walk outside along the brake run of the ride. This section once again features nice landscaping, but I also always skipped this part because it was a walk-on. I only walked through it once to get this footage. You walk up some stairs that lead into the second smaller queue house, which is right beneath the station. In this queue house, the fast pass queue and the regular queue line also merge into one. After this queue house, one more set of stairs follow, which bring you up to the station. When I was there, you were freely able to choose your row. As previously said, the ride was almost always a walk-on, so I always was able to ride without waiting too long, and this was literally a dream. I mean, this is the park's standout coaster and almost nobody was waiting for it. First up, the station looks very awesome with the wood floor and the windows. I especially liked the operator booth of this ride here. Now, the station looks pretty awesome and all, but the best looking part of this coaster are by far the trains. These trains are just pure eye candy with its detail. They are nearly identical to the trains of Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City, the only exception being the logo at the front of each car. Mack Rides just delivered an amazing end result here, and they are some of, if not my favorite coaster trains. Now, for the layout overview, I'm giving the word once again to past me from like a month ago. Alright, so we pull out of the station into a right-hand turn JoJo roll, which gives some great hang time, and we roll onto the launch track, where we will pause for 5 seconds before we launch. Woo! So we launch and go into the top hat. Oh my god, some great airtime. Left hand out a big turn, vertical drop, down into the banana roll, which then goes through a loop. Woo! second launch over a double inverting dive loop. Woo! Into a bunny hop. Left hand turn. Over back turn. And the double up into the final brake run. Holy shit. It's so hard to narrate the entire ride on this. Holy crap. I don't know if you hear anything, but if you do, then cool. Wow, this ride is good. Now that we have a basic overview of the layout, I want to break down the major moments and talk about each element quickly. The Jojo roll provides some amazing hang time in all rows, but in the front row, the duration is clearly the longest. In the back, you get pulled through the element at a little faster pace, but the hang time still exists and it's still very good, but it just doesn't last as long as in the front. Now, the launch isn't the most forceful, which is quite typical for Mack Ride's launches. This one, however, is better than any other of the launches because the trains start to spin while you launch. This is quite an odd feeling since you are not used to experience launches like this. The top hat follows after the launch. The pull-up has a slight rattle, but it's nothing too bad. When you go up the top hat, you get some amazing ejector airtime in the front, and a mild pop of floater even in the back. The drop down from the top hat is also very good, even a little better than the ascent. The ideal scenario for the drop would be if you sit in the back car and you have a decent spin. If you're lucky, you start going down the drop backwards, which makes the already strong ejector airtime moment even more insane. Now, I just found out that this drop has trim brakes, but I didn't feel them at all. I didn't even knew that until finalizing this script. Now, the banana roll is super disorienting and it has a pretty good pull if you sit in the back row. It's also really disorienting when you spin fast. I especially love it when you traverse this element sideways and you look directly down at the water when you are at the top. Now, the loop is really forceful, but it's also not the most intense. I especially love it when you traverse the loop sideways. You just see the park flip 360 degrees and that's quite a cool visual. The 0G roll is normally nothing special, but when you go through the element sideways, just like on Ride to Happiness, it's so much better. The following turns are nothing special. These turns are not that great and the train crawls over the second turn really slowly. But while other enthusiasts may complain about this, I really appreciate this break. You just had an intense first half and you can chill a little bit before the mayhem starts again in the second half. The second launch was quite surprising. First up, the force of the acceleration was surprisingly intense for a Mack coaster. Secondly, you get some amazing and very strong floater airtime in the front row and some good ejector in the back while going over the hill. So basically the back car once again has a little stronger airtime, but the front car also delivers some good airtime here. Next up is the double inverting dive loop. This is by far the most disorienting element of the entire ride. When you spin quite fast and you also invert twice during that, you lose track which way is up and which way is down. I lost orientation on about half of my rides and I only regained it after the element was already over. The remaining airtime hill and double up provide some final moments of ejector airtime. Now, I feared that the airtime in the back car on the second hill of the double up will be weak. However, I was luckily proven wrong. Every row gives amazing airtime on these final hills, even in the back. This double up ends your ride on Ride to Happiness and you then return to the station through one final turn and the final block section. Now, before I move on to the next point, I just quickly want to mention my 5 favorite elements of the ride. The bunny hill that features the second launch. The double inverting dive loop. The final double up. The first top hat. And finally, the Jojo roll. Now, the big question is which row and which seat is the best. The front is obviously better when you go up through an element. Best example being the top hat and the double inverting dive loop. The airtime and whip going into these elements is great. The back row is obviously better for the airtime when you go down. The most obvious example here being the so-called cliffhanger drop on the top head. I can't decide which row I like better because the ride honestly delivers in any car. So to find out which row I enjoy the most, I decided to make a graph where I list which element I prefer in which car. As you can see, there are front row, all rows or back row. So you can see that theoretically they are equally good because they both got 9 points. So I don't have a preference, right? Wrong. The drop down from the top part seals the deal for me. The airtime is so much more sustained than when you go up in the front car. Hence why I slightly prefer the back row. So now that we talked about which row or seat is the best, let's actually talk about the seats. The ride uses the classic Mack ride seats and over-the-shoulder lap bars that you can also find on Helix, Blue Fire and Lost Gravity. These are my favorite roller coaster seats by far. They are the most comfortable seats that you can find on any roller coaster in my opinions, and I could sit in them for hours. Mack rides, please start selling office chairs, please. The comfort of the seats and restraints make this coaster very re-rideable, and it's definitely one of the many pros this coaster has. Speaking about the restraints, the ride uses classic Mack over-the-shoulder lap bars that you can also find once again on Blue Fire, Helix and Lost Gravity. Now, a lot of people often complain how these Mack over-the-shoulder lap bars usually come down further during the ride and don't really let you get any airtime. I am happy to report that these stay in place once you leave the station, and I am so glad that they fixed this complaint for this coaster. It's one of the big reasons why the airtime is so good on the ride. So if you manage to leave a bit of space, you can enjoy the ride with a really loose restraint. If you want space, just slide forward in the seat and push against the restraint with your hips. Just hold that position until you dispatch. It takes a bit of strength, but it's well worth it. The restraints are also very comfortable, and same goes for the seats of course. So yeah, that's why they are some of my favorite seats and restraints. The theming of this coaster is also very good. When the name and theme was first announced, I was very skeptical, but now that I wrote it, I have to say it's very good. The area and the queue is also very nice. It has some great theming elements. On the outside parts of the queue, however, it doesn't really offer that much. Now, I don't fully understand the connection of the theming to the Tomorrowland Festival. However, if there is one, just tell me in the comments. I am also not a Tomorrowland nerd, so I don't know if there is something super obvious that I am missing, and Tomorrowland fans are probably already writing an angry comment. I heard the theming was made by the people who built the stages for the Tomorrowland Festival, but I can't find any source that confirmed this. However, the station and Minions building look very good, and it's one of my favorite station buildings. Now, one detail that I also really like is the side of the stairs. Now, what's at the side of the stairs, you ask? Look here, there is some text that says, "Live today, love tomorrow, unite forever." And that's a really neat detail. Now, another theming element that I really like is the onboard soundtrack. It starts off very calm and mysterious but gets more intense over time. I listen to this soundtrack on a daily basis and I love it. I also really like the short and calm Tomorrowland melody add-on that plays on the break run after the main soundtrack ended. The bass sounds that also continue to play until you enter the station are very neat. Another thing that I really like about the theming are the announcements that are being played both in the queue and station building. I especially love the announcement in the station with the robot woman who gets projected at the front wall of the station. Usually, announcements in a ride station or queue are very boring and annoying, saying things like smoking isn't allowed or something like that. No, they don't do that here. They only use these announcements for thematic purposes, and that's why I love it. Out of all the theming elements which use voices, this one stood out to me as really special. I don't know why, I can't explain why, but it just works. Now, one of the greatest things was that for the 2 days I was there, this ride was almost always a walk-on or a one-cycle wait. On the first day we were even allowed to switch seats without leaving the station if nobody was waiting for the row we switched to. This was the reason why I also wrote this this ride in car 2 and 3 very often. We just took whatever was available. The ride also delivered in these seats, and as mentioned before, it's definitely a neat situation. Now I have two little things I want to criticize. This ride is nearly perfect, but I just want to mention these two quickly. They are just minor things, however they are so insignificant I was thinking of leaving them out of this review, but then it wouldn't have been an honest review. Let's get it over with. The first thing that I want to mention is that this coaster has a slide rail.
Yeah, oh my god, the ride has a rail, it's instantly bad.
No, just kidding. It's very weak, but it's still quite noticeable when you do 5 rides in a row. However, this rattle only really existed when the train or car wasn't fully loaded. For the rare times where the train or car was full, this rattle disappeared. So I guess it has something to do with weight distribution or something like that. Let me know in the comments if you can confirm it's smooth with a full train or if those few times were just a fluke. Another indirect criticism has nothing to do with the coaster itself. It's about the merchandise. While the ride has a merch shop, it only has one design about the ride and the rest is just Tomorrowland branded merch. I would have loved if there were multiple shirt designs, maybe even some cups or mugs. But no, just that one shirt design slapped on a white or black shirt or hoodie. The black versions of this design also were only available with glitter print, which I don't really like. So if Plopsaland de Panne could expand the merch offerings for the ride, that would be awesome. In conclusion, Ride to Happiness is an amazing roller coaster and it's definitely one of the best European coasters in my opinion. Now I haven't ridden Taiga, Zadra, Untamed and all the other good coasters in Europe, but some of the other people that have ridden this coaster can confirm that this ride is elite. The ride has a great presentation, awesome theme, great queue and it just looks good. The layout is near perfection and it provides all the core sensations a roller coaster could have. It has hang time. Both types of airtime, which is ejector and floater. It has some intense moments and some great laterals and some good whip. It has an amazing onboard soundtrack, probably one of the best. It also has the best seats and restraints any coaster could have, and the restraints are also perfect for airtime junkies like me. The ride also delivers when it's slow, and when it does that, you know the ride is gonna be good. It's really forceful but still very rideable and just so much fun. So generally I tend to like it when coasters have a variety of sensation and elements. As said before, Ride to Happiness has hang time, airtime, high G-force sections, whip and all that gets delivered through a variety of elements like inversions, turns, airtime hills and some snappy twists. The ride always throws a new sensation at you and not just airtime and positives. The layout is well mixed together so it results in that variety. This is one of the big reasons why this ride is at my #1 spot. It brings all the different sensations. And while it delivers all these sensations, it does it in the perfect way. Like all of these sensations are delivered perfectly. Hang time on the Jojo roll, airtime on the top hat, second launch ejector bunny hill, and the final 3 airtime moments towards the end of the ride, and the high G-forces in the valley between elements. And finally, some snap or whip in the 0 G roll and the double inverting dive loop. So this is why this ride is so good in my opinion. I hope this analogy made sense and did at least sound somewhat reasonable and not like Minecraft enchanting table language. So obviously, as already said, this is my new #1 and I don't know if this can be topped anytime soon. Which is exactly what I said in my fly review, but this time I mean it. Watch me jinx myself again. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say about Ride to Happiness at Plopsaland de Panne. Obviously for its final score it's gonna receive 10 points out of 10 possible points because honestly, I can't think of anything that would make this coaster better. Like, it's perfect in my eyes. So, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. And if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing as it would help me out a lot and I would really appreciate it. Lastly, make sure to follow my Instagram for updates on my upcoming videos and updates from my No Limits 2 projects. And with all that said and done, thank you all so much for watching. Swiss Coaster Enthusiast, out.
Was ist das? Dude! Oh!
ride is insane, dude.